Welcome to the deep dive. This time, we're all about AI ethics, but we're doing it a little differently.
Yeah, forget the usual theoretical stuff.
Exactly. We're going straight to the source, the people actually building AI systems.
Right, the ones in the trenches.
Yeah, exactly. And we've got our hands on a new research paper. It's called Ethics in the Age of AI, an analysis of AI practitioners' awareness and challenges.
Catchy.
Right. It's fresh out of ResearchGate, so pretty cutting-edge stuff. They surveyed 100 AI practitioners, a decent sample size for this kind of thing.
So what do they find? What are these AI folks actually worried about?
Well, the first thing that struck me, we always hear about AI ethics, right?
Yeah,
But are these developers, like, truly thinking about it?
good question.
Turns out only 13% felt really, like, very familiar with the whole field.
Oh, wow, only 13%.
Yeah, most were, reasonably familiar, probably because of workplace rules, which, by the way, that's a huge part of this whole thing.
Interesting. It is a pretty new field, so that tracks. Even experts are figuring it out as they go, right?
Exactly.
And the study actually found that the more experience, education, even the specific job you had, like the more you knew about AI ethics.
So the more you're neck deep in the code, the more those ethical questions pop up.
Exactly. It's like anything you experience something firsthand, you start thinking about the implications more.
That's so true.
Actually, that reminds me, for you listening, does this sound familiar? Like, in your field, is ethics something you talk about openly, or is it more like learn as you go?
Ooh, good question. Something to think about as we keep going.
Yeah.
And speaking of going deeper, the research also looked at which specific ethical principles AI practitioners even know about.
Okay, so like the ground rules of ethical AI.
Yeah, exactly. And they used Australia's AI ethics principles as, like, their guide, which covers a lot. Human well-being, fairness, transparency, the whole shebang.
Makes sense to have a solid framework, especially with AI being so global.
Right. Okay, so ready for the most relatable stat of the day?
Hit me.
The principle most practitioners were familiar with, 64%, was privacy protection and security.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right. Like, these are people dealing with data all day long.
Data's their bread and butter for sure. But what about the other principles? Where do things start to like fall apart?
Well, reliability, human-centered values, fairness, those were all up there. But only 12% knew about all the principles outlined in those Australian guidelines.
Whoa, only 12%. That's kind of scary.
Right. It's like, imagine building a house without knowing all the building codes.
Exactly. Without those guidelines, how can we be sure AI is being built responsibly?
That's the million-dollar question. And that's where it gets really interesting. They asked these AI practitioners, why they knew about ethics, assuming it was from, like, school or something. But the number one answer, workplace rules.
Workplace rules. Really?
Yeah, 63% said that's where they learned the most about AI ethics.
Huh. That's actually kind of encouraging. Like, companies are taking it seriously, even if it's early days.
It's not just talk. They're putting it in the employee handbook. But here's the other side of that. Only 2% said their university education was their main source of AI ethics knowledge.
Wow. So it's like the workplace is the crash course and universities are still playing catch up.
Kinda, yeah. It shows how fast everything's moving.
That's a really good point for our listeners, though. If you're worried about this stuff at your work, pushing for those internal policies, it actually matters.
It's empowering. But here's the thing. Even if developers know the principles, actually building ethical AI, that's a whole other challenge.
Oh, absolutely.
And the research dug into that too. 3 main types of challenges. General ones, tech-related ones, and get this human-related one.
Oh, boy. The human factor.
Right, so let's start with those general challenges, though. The ones that are less about the tech itself and more about, like, how do we even define this stuff?
Right. Like easier said than done when it comes to ethics. Yeah, totally. It's like, how do you code good vibes, right?
Exactly. Or, like, human-centered values sounds great, but how do you actually build that into AI?
Right. It's subjective. Changes all the time. Different in every culture, probably.
Totally. And then you've got the classic problem, doing things right versus doing them fast and cheap. Ethical AI, that takes time, resources. Tough choices sometimes.
Project management triangle just got real, right?
Big time. But let's move on to those tech challenges for a sec. Because AI, as powerful as it is, it can be a bit of a black box.
Yeah.
Even for the people who build it.
Oh, for sure. And the study actually quoted some of the AI folks saying that. Like, they don't always know how the system is making its decisions.
Whoa, seriously?
Yeah. And if the creators don't even fully get it, how do we make sure those decisions are ethical? It's a big concern.
That's kind of unsettling.
Right. And then there's the whole scope of what AI can do. It's like impossible to predict all the ways it could go wrong ethically.
Oh, totally. Something that seems harmless now could be like a huge problem later.
Exactly. It's that unpredictability that makes it so tricky.
And we haven't even touched on the data part. Like what you feed these systems matters.
Oh, huge. Garbage in, garbage out, right? Biased data equals biased AI, and that's a whole other can of worms.
Speaking of worms, wanted to talk about the most interesting and maybe the most worrying thing they found.
Lay it on me.
Us, humans, we're the biggest challenge to ethical AI.
We are kind of messy, aren't we?
Right. All our biases, our blind spots, they all get baked into the AI we create.
It's true. We build these systems in our image, flaws and all, but what specific human things did they highlight?
So they had 4 main points. First up, lack of common perception. Basically, ethics are subjective. What you think is fair, someone else might completely disagree with.
Right, good point. There's no universal rule book for this stuff.
Exactly. Makes it tough to even agree on what ethical AI should look like, let alone build it.
It's like herding cats trying to get everyone on the same page ethically.
The best analogy. And then there's the knowledge gap. AI is moving so fast, even the experts are struggling to keep up with all the ethical stuff.
Oh, for sure. It's like trying to study for a test when the material keeps changing right in front of you.
Right. It's
Yeah.
overwhelming. Okay, then there's our limited foresight. Basically, we as humans are really bad at predicting the long-term consequences of our actions.
Case in point, social media.
Exactly. Started with connecting with friends, and now, well, we all know how that turned out.
Yeah, sometimes ignorance is bliss.
Right. But the point is, we suck at predicting the future, even with the best intentions. And that applies to AI, too.
So true. Which makes it even more important to be careful, to constantly be checking ourselves and the systems we create.
Absolutely.
Ah.
And that leads us to the last human limitation. And this one is, like, deep. They just basically say, straight up, humans are biased.
Well, they ain't wrong. We all have those unconscious biases, whether we like it or not.
Exactly.
Right?
And without even realizing it, those biases can seep into the AI we're building.
And that's scary. Think about it. AI making decisions about loans, jobs, even healthcare, all while carrying our baggage.
It's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And the researchers found that, yeah, most of the AI people they talk to, they get this. They're worried about accidental bias creeping in, even when they're trying to do the right thing.
Which makes these conversations, like what we're doing right now, so important. This isn't just about, like, tweaking algorithms. It's about understanding ourselves, our weaknesses, so we can build AI responsibly.
It's like we're holding up a mirror to humanity with AI, right?
Yeah.
All are good, all are bad. It gets amplified.
Totally. And that's why just knowing about the challenges isn't enough. We've got to DO something, you know?
Yeah.
Build those safeguards into AI right from the start.
Create a future where AI helps us, not the other way around.
100%. And that future, it's not set in stone. It's being written right now. Every line of code, every choice we make.
So true. So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's think about those choices. We talked about how awareness of AI ethics is growing, but putting it into practice is tough. And then that huge EE take away the human factor.
Yeah.
Our biases, our blind spots, we can't ignore those if we want ethical AI.
It all comes down to this. If you're listening and you're wondering, what can I do? Your voice matters. Pushing for ethical rules at your job, educating yourself, even just talking about these issues, it all makes a difference.
It really does. Don't be afraid to ask the tough questions, you know?
Yeah.
Demand transparency, accountability.
Yeah.
Make sure AI is serving US, not the other way around.
Exactly. The future of AI, it's not a spectator sport. We're all in this together.
Yeah.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
That's a wrap on this deep dive, everyone. Huge thanks to expert speakers, title, and affiliation provided in original outline for breaking it all down for us. It's been quite the journey.
My pleasure. Keep those questions coming, folks.
And for all our listeners, if you want to go even deeper down the rabbit hole, check out our show notes. We've got a link to that research paper we talked about. Until next time, stay curious.